Welcome to Contact Has Begun, brought to you by the grace of the World Puja Network, one of the last vestiges of truth concerning benevolent, spiritually and technologically advanced off-world visitors. Some refer to these visitors as our greater family of man or returning ancient ancestors. I am James Gillen, your host, and our guests also include cutting-edge physicists, authors, teachers, and healers dedicated to the awakening and healing of humanity and the earth. Let the journey begin. Greetings, this is James Gillen with Contact Has Begun and World Puja. We've got a great show today. We've got Dr. J.J. Hurtak and Dr. Desiree Hurtak on the show. And, Dr. Hurtak is a social scientist, comparative religionist, scholar, well-known author, founder, and president of the Academy of Future Science. He is author of over 15 books, including commentaries on ancient, mystical, and gnostic texts, such as the Pistis Sophia. Dr. Hurtak is best known for his book published originally in 1973, entitled The Book of Knowledge, The Keys of Enoch. And we've got Desiree with us here, too, and she's an author, social scientist, and founder of the Academy for Future Scientists, an international organization, the wife of J.J. Hurtak. She has co-written with him numerous books, including texts and commentaries on Coptic texts, the Pistis Sophia, and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. I can go on and read about their endeavors for the whole hour, basically, but we have so much information that we want to get across today that I'd really want to bring them on the show. So, Desiree and J.J., are you with us?
Yes, we are, and we want to send our greetings to all of our friends and colleagues throughout the world, and thank you for your great pioneering work.
Right, James. It's great to be with you, and there's so much going on the planet that it's so important that you're doing what you're doing.
This is really a cosmic update of the Keys of Enoch because we see many validations taking place, and we'd just like to send out a sense of preparation and inner peace that we need as we engage with the cosmic cultures.
Great. Yeah, there are so many things going on, and one of the things I wanted to ask, there's a video out there by a woman scientist, and Susan something, I can't remember her last name, but it's just amazing where they're not talking about this. NASA and a lot of the astrophysicists are not really talking about what's going on, but we were getting hit by about 15 or maybe 50 bursts of energy just a year ago, and now it's up to 500 massive bursts of energy are hitting the planet right now, coming from galactic core and other places. And they just filmed this massive gamma ray burst coming towards us, but it's in the shape of a diamond, which means it's under some kind of intelligent control or whatever. And they're getting all of these serpent ropes, they're calling them, or waves of energy coming in, as well as surrounding the equatorial plane right now. There's a massive plasma field that's starting to appear, and it's reversing directions. There's all these things going on. I wonder if you can relate that to the Keys of Enoch and some of the things that you've talked about.
Well, the Keys talk about a galactic house cleaning taking place. So what's going on in terms of changes is only one small aspect of what's really taking place in the greater universe. So we feel, we're all together in this, and that's why even some of the extraterrestrials are actually also changing and experiencing these global changes and astrophysical changes on their planetary systems.
We're told in the Keys, specifically Key 309, that events associated with biosatellites and other cosmic oscillations will be recognized. Vehicle squadrons, I'm quoting now, stationed over important cities of the world will be seen, motivating humanity to seek out spiritual answers to life. Global communications throughout the planet will be interrupted. The light workers will begin to use telethought communication. So all of this is really preparing the way for a new astronomy and a new cosmology. The traditional paradigms of measurement are no longer sufficient. That's why we're happy with the new Kepler telescope that has been launched and the finding of extrasolar planets, as well as seeing now with better optical systems these unusual and somewhat bizarre light patterns that are not normally associated with general planetary science. We wanted to introduce to our radio audience throughout the world a young person here in Southern California by the name of Joey Dedios, and he had a very remarkable sighting on the 6th of January of this year. Joey, would you tell James Gillian and our radio audience what you saw?
Well, I was coming home from work, coming down from Tuscany Hills, and I have a perfect view of Lake Elsinore, and I witnessed 3 lights in the sky, and almost looked like a meteorite, and they stopped midair, where they kind of intertwined and danced around each other for about a minute and a half, where they then merged into one and kind of dissipated.
And I know this video now is on YouTube. He showed us. He didn't put it on, but someone else had seen it. So there were, massive peoples in that area who looked up at the sky at that time and saw these unusual lights. And we like the fact that it wasn't a kind of triangular formation, because from what we know is that they sometimes fly. That helps them in their flight maneuvers in low altitudes.
Actually, one of the signposts or symbols of the Brotherhood of Light, that is to say, the positive extraterrestrial forces, is the triangulations that they take on, showing the importance of the Trinity as well as the unity of body, mind, and spirit, not only in the human sense but also in the astrophysical sense, that there is a type of physical science that allows them to manifest within our spectrum of life without harming our spectrum of life. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing very unusual changes taking place that require us to look up positively and constructively. I'd like Joey to say a little bit more, because people would think that this was simply meteorites coming to Earth, but Joey, wouldn't you say that they were dancing around and then all of a sudden they merged back into one?
Yeah, there was definitely a level of intelligence. Seemed like they gravitated toward each other.
Did you feel anything when you were observing this? Because a lot of times there's like a telepathic or some kind of an energy exchange when you're observing these phenomena.
Not really, not personally. I just I looked up in the sky. I don't know what made me look up in the sky, but I looked up there.
Yeah. A lot of people get real giddy, or they get feel like a high energy, or they get really excited, and sometimes it's not just seeing the event, it's actually an exchange or a connection that happens.
Actually, it did. It was pretty exciting.
Uh-huh.
And this is in a very important area of Southern California, and we recognize that this has been also a historic place where many of the indigenous people have recorded in previous times light patterns that are not of the physical nature, but of the superphysical.
Right. So for your viewers that want to check out the YouTube on Lake Elsinore, you can hear the person who's videotaping and said, "Oh, it looks like one of those UFO things." They had no idea what it was. It just things started coming to them when they were videotaping it.
Key
5 as well as Key 311 has something to say. It says, I'm quoting out from the Keys of Enoch, Key 311. 3 other bodies of illumination manifest, and one cannot understand the 3 bodies of illumination without the network of membrane in the physical universe. In the likeness and appearance of fire, man will understand, quote unquote, the many in the one. So this is a higher meaning given to the fact that there are other dimensional light forms that are showing themselves, giving us a type of visual orientation to expect more, what Desiree and I call the space-time overlap.
Yeah, as you know, James, this is not only happening, of course, at ECETI, which we're really, that's so exciting as well, but people in Lima, Peru, and I think you were saying you recently saw something in Mexico.
Yeah, we saw, it was quite synchronistic. It was interesting. I was talking to this group, and this woman knew me in the group, and she goes, "Oh, this is James Gillen, and, he has ECETI, and he does a lot with ETs." And it was a very conservative group. There's about maybe 6 or 7 of them there together, and and I talked to him a little bit, and I talked to him about the overwhelming numbers, of the presence of life. As you're talking with the Kepler, they said there's over 50 billion planets in the Milky Way, and at least 500 million of those planets are in the not too hot, not too cold zone where life could exist. So all this information is coming out now, and it's interesting that right after I talked to him about that, they walked down to the beach, and this huge meteor-like object came in. It looked like a, orange and gold flames coming in together, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. It was coming right towards the coast. It just stopped, and then it split into two bright bluish-white objects, kind of bluish-green too, going back and forth, and they just sat there. And then they started moving around, and then they took off, and I believe they joined and took off together again. So I mean, these events are happening all over the world right now, and I thought it was amazing that right after we had that conversation, they went down and had the opportunity to actually see this happen for themselves. I know there's no accidents, and it's funny how the universe...
This is what's happening to people throughout the world this past year. Things are speeding up not only geopolitically, but also astrophysically. And again, I go back to Key 205, which I just mentioned a few minutes ago, verse 64 and 65. Hence, at our stage of breaking with earthbound consciousness, the vehicle becomes the central point of activity, for it illustrates the evolutionary model that can transfer scientific communities from planet to planet. In summary, the Merkaba, or the higher vehicle of light, shows man how to use a universal language of multi-level instruction through the intricate maneuvers and star keys which they leave behind. Their language is a language of light, capital L, which communicates to any creation through light, graphics, and pulsations.
Yeah, and of course Mexico is the land of contact, so many people there are aware. But what's really interesting, and what we were just talking to our mutual friend Colin Andrews, and even the crop circles seem to be connected with consciousness. So when you put a consciousness level out there, oftentimes these things are willing to manifest around you, and so that's very important for people to realize.
Yeah. Have you seen the Dome of the Rock footage?
Yes, I have. I've talked to people in the Middle East who've been quite surprised, but that would be a most auspicious and appropriate place over Jerusalem, and more specifically, not only over the Dome of the Rock, but also the foundations of the ancient Temple of Solomon, which is key to the three religions of Abraham, showing a sense of looking upward rather than downward, and recognizing that a type of capstone light from above must unify the geometries of faith, belief, and brotherhood from below.
Yeah, we're
at this time where this requires great love and compassion, not simply external signs or phenomena that can be easily dismissed by the editorial pundits and those of traditional physics and what we would call psychology, is simply thinking of this as simply projected belief systems or inner geometries that we're associating with sky phenomena. What we're saying is there's a whole new gateway to the stars that is being opened up, and that has a consciousness counterpart.
Right. And we feel, as you mentioned in your very first question about the astrophysics and the changes, even the weakening of the magnetic fields, we personally believe is helping our consciousness shift as well, because we're getting more of these cosmic rays in terms of our consciousness, and we're getting more attuned and aware. So this is all kind of part of it, all part of the transformation and the paradigm shift, as people call it, that we're going through.
Yeah, we did a little remote viewing on that situation, and we got a lot of information. Based on what they said, the first videos were accurate, and then they tried to flood some fakes in there, as they always do, to try to disqualify or discredit it. But when we looked into what that was all about, they said it was also tied into the Wailing Wall. And
that's right there, of course.
Yeah, and they said that there was an event at the Wailing Wall also, and they said that they were actually cleaning up that old consciousness that was psychometrized into the land there and giving it a huge new burst of energy, a shift that they're doing on higher levels. They have a spiritual form of technology.
Yeah, anytime they can make this consciousness clear, because that's really where one of the greatest struggles are taking place on the planet, obviously, between, the Jewish people actually are on the wall around it, and then if you climb the mount there, which is only so many steps, not so much, you get to the Dome of the Rock, which is an Arab Muslim
center point of faith.
And so to balance that would be extremely important. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. They talked a lot about that, and they said it's that old stuck separation game, energy that's going on that they were kind of undoing. And because these are PowerPoints, are very critical places on the planet, they had to actually shift that energy to assist the Earth in its transition or its awakening and healing process.
Yeah, we feel there's two key places that have gone on for the last 6,000 years in terms of struggle, and one is that point of the Middle East, as you mentioned, and actually from Egypt to Israel because they're larger fields, and the other is from Pakistan, the Kashmir area, into Tibet, and those are two key conflict areas that really, we need to change it in terms of our own consciousness, but it's certainly if they can help us, and I think they're helping us in many ways. I mean, we even think with some of the solar flares, they're trying to neutralize some of this, so it's not as bad as it could be.
I think, Desiree, you could explain a little bit more by what you mean by solar flares, because we somehow think of the tongues of fire coming off the surface of our sun that are threefold, fourfold, and even fivefold as great as historically measured, but we're talking about things that have been seen connected with the solar flares.
Well, the Keys of Enoch talk about the fact that solar flares can be really detrimental, as we all know, to our planet, but more than just to the electronics, but with the earthquakes and with volcanoes, because if some of this energy, even the gamma rays that you're talking about, gets into the outer core and then eventually releases to the mantle, I mean, it's trying to release, and that goes through the volcanoes and the earthquakes. So this can be really bad in a sense. And I think that there is really some protection going on right now for all of us to evolve a little bit more so that we can be prepared for the changes and maybe ready for, leaving this planet sometime soon on a positive way with other levels of intelligence. And we also like to think of in a light body.
We're talking about now quantum evolutionary change, whereby some part of the human race will be inspired through consciousness extension and super mental powers to realize that we are a part of a much larger family of creation and that those greater gifts on high can be shared with us. And we will actually experience, not only in this quantum change, a higher infusion of supernatural energy we would call emergent spirituality will appear on the scene, and we'll realize that we're more of a consciousness light body rather than the physical body or biosuit of three-dimensional matter. We will be able to steer the DNA, RNA within our system to adapt itself to new environments as we realize, gee, there is life on the high frontier, and ultimately we begin to take our baby steps into space, into new levels of civilization and interaction with those cosmic life systems.
Yeah, there's definitely validation for that. I know NASA, and I have footage of that, of these massive ships parked right next to the sun that expand their fields out and actually block some of these coronal mass ejections or flares. They've intervened several times, and it has the NASA stamp on and everything. They're fully aware of this. Also, too, we're having some crazy stuff happen here in the self-mastery classes where people are actually disappearing. They're turning into their light bodies and then returning. And some remember what happened and some don't. And we're having a lot of bilocation things happening here that are very well documented where people and some of the monks and yogis that come here they seem to be jumping around the planet and not really having a lot of control over it.
I know what you're talking about, because after Dr. Hurtak had his experience, I was, there with him afterwards, and he would also biolocate sometimes, and sometimes even in Israel one time our whole car biolocated from one place to another, and, these things happen when there's just so much energy that you're processing at the time.
And even though NASA officials denied the whole discipline of extraterrestrial studies and or accepted it only later when it was seen in terms of radio astronomy as the SETI, privately, many of my NASA colleagues did realize there were independent efforts, i.e. under different labels and under different steering committees that were looking at lower planetary events, objects, and manifestations that would suggest parallel evolution.
But what's really cool is that people are getting it on so many levels. I mean, people, like I said, in Lima, Peru, are looking up in the sky and seeing things here in Lake Elsinore. They're doing it as well. And then other people are getting it through their meditations, and some even in their dream states. They're having these contacts. And it's just part of our awakening. That's what the Keys of Enoch actually talk about, is that we're being prepared. We're being prepared to connect with our higher selves and connect with these extraterrestrial levels of intelligence, and we have to be working more on our higher self to understand who they are and how to work with them.
So this is not just a series of random events that people see and forget about in the newspapers, but we're seeing here the coming of a higher evolutionary reality that connects what I call exosociology, the desire to go beyond confinement of Earth-based societies into the next stage of evolution, and also an exotheology of realizing that there is a spiritual component completely ignored by government specialists that links the inner consciousness domains of the human psyche with extreme powers of consciousness evolution, what is now being called non-local consciousness, awareness and connectiveness. And this is coming through the disciplines of remote viewing, remote healing, and remote sensing. So these are all critical to our work with the Academy for Future Science, because we have some of the best minds that have been previously connected with either NASA and or programs in other countries, putting the pieces together and connecting the dots. We have to realize that there's a whole shift that's coming very soon to our planet that will require great wisdom, great humility, and great brotherhood and sisterhood. Otherwise, these are simply seen as nice little dots in the sky with no meaning to the turmoil or the chaos in the streets of governments caving into the popular movement of peoples who are looking for deeper answers in life and who are no longer interested in just the systematic ignoral and ignorance of situations of life as it is normally practiced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was given in meditation. I was meditating one day and connecting with some very highly evolved ultradimensionals, and what's interesting is they were sounding biblical when I was talking to them, and they were saying God is coming. It's a frequency. It's a force. It's a balancer, and they talked about these events that were coming, and they said that it's going to move through the hearts and minds of all humanity and the earth, and they said you're going to see an end to tyranny really soon. And then the last thing they said was just maybe a month ago, they said it's here. I mean, the energy's here. It's moving forward, and it's going to be moving forward very quickly. And then now we're seeing all of these calls for freedom and people, joining together and praying. And unfortunately, the news is showing all this violence, which in a lot of cases isn't happening. It's contrived.
What I call electronic seance, of getting minds addicted to violent scenarios, overlooking the deeper sense of raising consciousness and separating really from the traditional dualistic side of this versus that. It can only be resolved through political repression or some type of materialistic outcome. In essence, the keys are saying the Merkaba vehicle, I'm quoting from Key 202 of light, descends upon the planet whereby a field of light is opened and whole light beings descend as the magnetic fields of the space-time overlap are controlled.
Well, what we're excited about, as you were talking about, is the changes of Egypt, because that could be so significant that we've just experienced now for the future of archaeology, for understanding our past, for understanding who we are. So as we also work with the biblical teachings, in fact, Dr. Hurtak has actually given a higher cosmology for all the books in the Bible, which we feel is still important to understand our program from Alpha to Omega. We also see Egypt as key and critical in terms of opening up the hidden records that are there that have been somewhat blocked. So we're really hoping and praying and meditating that the new regime will allow really people from all over the world to be able, the archaeologists, to come in and really find these things that they've been trying to look for a
do you think
especially Giza, Egypt, which is the nexus point for all the previous civilizations of the ancient Near East, connecting Africa, Asia, and Europe. And that library of records is so critical for the reevaluation of human history, and this is why we must keep our prayers very high for protection of this great historic legacy and the intellectual wisdom of the ancients that can do so much more in terms of a living, shall we say, commentary on where we go from this point.
Right. When we were working with Boris Said, they did do ground-penetrating radar under the paws of the Sphinx, and I think it was on the left side that they found a cavern that they've been trying to just put a small fiber optic cable through, and this has not been allowed. The French have found things inside the Great Pyramid, and they haven't been allowed either. So,
but even more important, we used acoustical geometries in our use of ground-penetrating radar and musical instrumentation to go even deeper, where we momentarily experience the entrance to a whole series of labyrinthian tunnel systems. And so we know that there's even more there to Giza beneath the surface than the classical Egyptologists from Europe Harvard and other places have alluded to.
Yeah, especially around the Tomb of Osiris, which we were, one of the first down there when the water levels had dropped, and we found the lid of the Tomb of Osiris. But we also did ground penetrating radar of the whole area, and there's much more in the neighboring areas that they just wouldn't allow us to go through.
Yeah, I know that from my own experience, when I was with the Tibetan Foundation, we were going out of body and taking these trips to different places, and we descended down the right paw of the Sphinx and went down into this chamber. And, one of the rooms there, I looked into one of the rooms, and there was these huge urns with all of these scrolls in them. And it was all the information, all the light technology, the spiritual technology, everything were in those scrolls. And I tried to walk into the room, and a force field hit me and said, not yet, And so it was quite interesting. And so just from my own experience, I know there's a lot of stuff down there that would totally turn human history upside down, but for the better, and really get us in touch with our own divine heritage.
He 2:14 tells us, at this time changes in the new heavens have caused great changes to occur upon the earth, loosening the chambers of the deep where the great scientific scriptures of the ages are hidden. Those people who are interested may want to go to our website, keysofenoch.org or futurescience.org, and scroll down and look at two masterful music CDs that we've just released. One entitled "The Opening
of Egypt," right?
Mm-hmm.
Opening of the Great Pyramid, and the other the Pyramidal Capstone. These have actual recordings of sounds of the ancient tongues that were used in Egypt and Israel that have actually caused standing columnar waves to appear momentarily with these tomb areas. So there's a whole soundscape of energy that is there in the recording that you can feel. So again, we're saying this to the radio audience. Realize that there's a whole language of music and communication that is connected with these geometric forms that is so essential.
Right, so it's like bringing the sound vibrations of Egypt to you. I think the second one's called Living Capstone. The first is the opening of the Great Pyramid. But all these vibrations, there's a certain resonant frequency that we believe is coded inside the chambers themselves, and we've done research also in the Yucatan for the Mayan, and we've compared the sound frequencies. This is the greatest resonant frequencies inside the chamber with both Egypt and the Mayans, and found that there's certain things that really take your mind into other levels of awareness.
Mm-hmm. I just purchased a flute recently that I have a lot of F sharp flutes, but I got one in G, and it's a double flute, so you can play both at the same time and in harmony. And there's a couple times I was playing a song and I hit a certain frequency with both flutes going. And for a second there, I had a huge jolt of energy just go right through my body, and and it's in the key of G, which is interesting. But they say that's the Earth energy or the Earth frequency. That's what some people say, and I've heard other people say F sharp is the one that opens the pyramids, or it's the frequency of the pyramids.
A sharp and F sharp are two key vibratory frequencies that we found.
And G has been, and G or F sharp.
Well, that would be in between.
On the age of the pyramid and the Earth that you're taking inventory of, show a point of musical bridge work that is very, very important in connecting what we have found sacred areas throughout the world. So there may be slight tonal differences that have occurred over the last 6,000 plus years, 10,000 plus years, 36,000 plus years, but we have found in recovery of ancient musical instruments in the Far East, Central Asia, and in the Near East that many of the temples were key to G and F sharp. And this is very important for the raising of consciousness through the celebrants, through the ancient scientific priest, and from the standpoint of just the average believer or participant who had a beautiful voice and could go into a musical chamber to feel relaxed, taking a deep breath, and feel the emanations of the angelic hierarchies as he or she would begin to raise their consciousness through music, ultimately realizing that the key musical instrument is the body itself. Our body, our human body, with all of the chakra energy points, is a living musical instrument to be awakened, to be used, to be enjoyed breaking, as it were, the consciousness bondage with simply the three-dimensional form.
Right, so all life really is vibration, even down to the subatomic particles, and if we can generate that, that's how we feel we're also able to move into other realities. In fact, we were doing some work and study with the cloth of Turin last year, and it seems that when Jesus made his transition from the physical form to the light form, he went through certain frequency vibrations and ultimately even through the ultraviolet spectrum. And this is something that we've also talked about as going through these wave frequencies as well.
So if you read the Gospels carefully, when he's saying on the cross or uttered Eli, Eli, it was a type of musical expression that was very sacred. It was a sacred use of one of the divine names as his energy field was shifted and lifted up. This is very important because one of the recent confirmations of the Keys of Enoch has been that Italian scientists have identified letters on the shroud, somewhat invisible, but now with new optic systems and new computer systems, and image enhancements have been made. And over the throat area of the Jesus figure seen on the shroud, there appears the Hebrew Aleph, which is the first letter in the alphabet. This is very important, suggesting that apparently some type of death certificate was momentarily laid on the cloth by Roman authorities that had letters written upon it, and due to the sublimation, energy transformation, one of these letters was imprinted on the cloth, which now is detectable. If you turn to the Keys of Enoch, key 211, and look at the plate of what is called the Adam Kanmon, or the archetypal figure of human creation, you will see around the face of Jesus, you will see over the throat the same Aleph letter. The Keys of Enoch are thus validating the cloth of Turin, and the cloth of Turin are validating the keys, because this is the only book that has that in the exact same place that has been matched by recent researchers and laser physicists.
Right, and one of these people is Barbara Frail, who put out this book, and she's connected with some of the Vatican archives. But I think what's most interesting is the whole vibratory change that, that was kind of a way shower for all of us, how we're going through getting sensitized to these vibrations and ultimately can change our own vibratory frequency.
And what I noticed here, too, is we actually have the recording of some of the ships that we had the above top secret guys here, and one of them actually received a spontaneous healing, which he doesn't want to talk about for some reason. And he actually recorded the ship hovering over we have a pyramid here we do a lot of the energy work in. And at the time, Robbie Williams was here, the famous pop star, and his sound crew, and he had all his equipment here, and so we put it on the on his equipment, and he was checking it out, and he says, I have heard everything, but this is, he said, basically out of this world. And he said there are tones over tones over tones, and it's kind of like reverberating each other. And I thought that was quite interesting when I heard that, because when I played those two tones together in the flute is when that big shot of energy went through, and I felt like if I would have kept that frequency going, I could have actually jumped a dimension or something. So it
want to tie this together with what Steven Spielberg tried to do in the final scene of Close Encounters, a famous film that came out in 1977 with the NASA scientist trying to communicate through different musical signals of quavers and semi-quavers with very sophisticated musical instruments, realizing, of course, that there's a music of communication, but there's also the human experience connected with these musical sound signals, which is basically opening up the throat chakra, which, again, if we can connect the dots of what scientists have recently found in the cloth or the shroud of Turin, would mean that there'd be the opening into a higher level of communication from the Jesus figure as a way shower to a whole new alphabet or a whole new language of vibration. The Eli, Eli, the signal, the sound structure of the body being elevated to a whole new octave, a whole new utterance of language, to me is the key to, as it were, connecting the mind to the higher chakra levels of superconsciousness.
Yeah. And we do feel some of these frequency vibrations is what allows them to transit to other dimensional realities too. And you know, whether you do it as a vehicle, as a spaceship, or whether you do it in your physical body. You know, some people, as you know, the ancient cities could levitate. You know, they're able to get that anti-gravity situation just by mind and thought, and in some sense, I believe, vibration, and able to change that. So we have all these possibilities that we're just awakening to, and I think this is the whole gift that we're being given by the visitations, both spiritual and physical, to see that these other realities exist, and we can be a part of it. It's not just out there. We can actually put it through our own system and really make a change.
Yeah, I know Michael Tellinger has done a lot of work over there. I guess he thinks he found the Adam's calendar and the home of Enki, you know, the Anunnaki or whatever. But he's finding out that all of these rocks and all of this work there is all related to sound and vibration, and that they generate a huge amount of energy through these natural processes. And I think it's really interesting when he has those singing rocks he has, you know, that you could actually play like an instrument if you wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. When granite and all that stuff has a certain crystalline structure in there that really vibrates, you almost create a type of piezoelectric energy. And I know we've actually, if you're talking about the South African location, I think that's the Adam's calendar.
We've been able to measure those areas very extensively. You have colleagues who know him quite well, and we find that there are, we say, new endeavors now in archaeology and cultural anthropology to look deeper at the symbols connecting our plane of consciousness with a universal totality that we're becoming more acquainted with.
And some of them were aligned, I know he believes, to Orion, and that's, of course, key for not only the Keys of Enoch cosmology, but also the ancient Mayans and the Egyptians. So, you know, who are these people from Orion? And I think that's something we should look at. When you said, you know, some of the stuff you were getting was almost biblical, the Bible even talks about Orion. Why were they talking about this stuff? You know, what is that particular constellation? We think it's actually an astrophysical stargate that leads into other universes.
So if we were trying to summarize the various points of discovery, particularly in archaeology and cultural anthropology, and look at the bottom line, we could cite that in previous cycles, man, under the guidance of light pictographs, interpreted higher reality according to an alphabet of higher creation, and that we are beginning to understand that this higher language that we're seeing in the ancient stone formations helps us respatialize our linear language into a language capable of respatializing our consciousness and sharing, as it were, in other levels of creative intelligence. We're beginning to merge our human viewpoints with a greater cosmic totality of the tree of life.
Yeah, it does seem the more we move into tones and frequencies and things like that, that this very well may be the solution to healing, to all of our energy needs and everything else. It's these I call them spiritual technologies that I know we have a lot of this already, and it's been suppressed. And, you know, it just really needs to get out there, and hopefully there will be a big revolution to the point of where all this information can come out.
Yeah, we do believe sound frequencies, if you have the right frequency, you can restore the body. We also think, of course, meditation allows that because you have the right blueprint is there, and living in this planet, you kind of corrupt that with all the foods or the electromagnetic frequencies that you're exposed to, and so you just need to figure out how to restore that. And frequency, color, because color and frequency do match. They work together in some capacities, you know, definitely help to restore the body. And people are working with trying to find those frequencies for every disease. That's always a very, very difficult process.
You use the word lightly, revolution, but it's also consciousness evolution. So it's the coming together of a new spirituality with a new area of science that merges both evolution and revolution to be, as it were, part of a double helix that we're part of. We have to go beyond the paradigm of the past, but we also have to evolve ourselves into a higher state of consciousness capable of working with these, so we say, these multidimensional paradigms, because we are, in essence, multidimensional, non-local beings of eternity in the human form, graduating now back into a higher level of existence.
And just to give a plug for some of our music CDs, part of the work of the Academy and located at the keysofenoch.org website is many, many CDs that use sacred expressions and sacred vibrations and even the process of forgiveness to release some of this energy and also to raise your consciousness to a higher state. And we find, most people really do walk around the planet in a very negative state. And if you can start using some of these higher vibrations and the music and even sacred expressions that we incorporate divine names, it helps to raise your consciousness, and then you become in tune and more susceptible to sharing with these higher levels of other intelligences that are trying to communicate with you that you're ignoring because you're sitting there in your state of negativity.
And we break out of this negative spiral that's reinforced by so much of commercial advertising and the electronic seance of television that plays up so much of the negative, so much of violence, so much of what I will call the repression of the female element of creativity that is now coming to the foreground. So we live in a very dynamic period of time, which I will call the age of miracles. We're beginning to see what the ancients call the outpouring of the Holy Spirit, the type of cosmic Pentecostal uprising within the psyche that reaches out and sees different language patterns, ultimately forged into a stream of consciousness which balance not only the medicine and the psychology of a whole new way of looking at life, healing life, touching life, but also realizes within its own power a consciousness extension to like-minded people throughout Mother Earth, where we build brotherhoods and sisterhoods of compatibility who look really to the coming of a new creation from above, Isaiah chapter 66, if you will, rather than one that simply bounces back like a ping-pong game between despotic rulers or corporate mindsets that do not look as human beings as something more than simply the bottom, a total of economic expansion. We are living divine beings sharing a grace and a love vibration that is so fantastic. It can move mountains. It can change whole civilizations overnight if we use this greater power that we have. Mm-hmm. So let's look forward to this great quantum leap that we're a part of.
It's definitely a wave that's coming in, and it's undeniable, and it's pushing freedom to the surface, and people are uniting. And I thought it was great in Egypt because they had Christians and Muslims and people from every walk of faith were there all praying together in a common cause. And in a way, these tyrants are bringing everybody together, by being tyrants. But, one of the things I wanted to talk about was in one of your DVDs, it was amazing because I had my own experience with this Orion Council of Light and, as well as some of the Andromedans and Pleiadians and these other beings. And a lot of them are melodic when they talk, they're more energy involved, more in light and holograms and energy. But what blew me away is that one encounter I had where I was taken aboard the ship with Malia. She looked exactly like one of the beings you had drawing of in one of your videos.
Was the Merkaba film?
Yeah,
the Merkaba. Yeah, they greet.
Yeah,
the being was greeting with the hand, really through the body expressions but also through the eye that was open, and you could see through the iris radiations of light, and you could feel the love and the beauty of the face. And this is really the whole identity, what some would call the spiritual anthropology of recognizing that we are really part of a much larger family of creation, and that as we work with the brotherhoods and sisterhoods of light, we are gathered together and connect with them through the compatibility of the greater love and respect they show for us, and also the recognition that we can identify more with those life forms that share the anatomical proportions and aesthetics that would make us in a new sociological framework of civilization compatible with them, with psychological transitions and sociological transitions that are being supported by this unconditional love.
Right, so the Keys talk about Orion and the Pleiades. The Pleiades is called the cradle and throne of our consciousness because these beings that are there, and, there's other star systems, Arcturus and other places, are those that are part of our own ancestral heritage. And I always say that's what's so cool because, we don't believe that we were manipulated so much down here because we're really part of this galactic civilization that's out there, Orion, Pleiades, Arcturus.
And when you use the word our, you're speaking of peoples of the world. So whether you go to the peoples in Yucatan or you go to the peoples the Zulu peoples of East Africa, or you go to the peoples of the Orient, they're the Pleiades, or even the North and South American, Native American people.
And the Mayans.
They refer to certain areas that are very important for association. And again, we have to realize that there are not so nice civilizations in space. We cannot be so open-minded. Our brains fall out and recognize that we can make the wrong choices in the absence of love and true wisdom. But the native caretakers who have guarded these special areas, according to the Keys of Enoch, have illustrated that sometimes it's necessary to understand the heartbeat of the collective heritage of humanity. So when Desiree uses the word our, she's referring to global humanity being awakened to its spiritual endowment.
Right, but there are other civilizations out there, the reptilians, as you know, and even the Greys, and they have different star systems that they're really working with and working to prom. And even though, there's some sort of cosmic brotherhood out there, those who are really, I think, working more with this planet directly to help us and to block the solar flares and to maybe send us the right vibrations, even in terms of cosmic rays, are those that are connected with these star systems of Orion, the Pleiades, and Arcturus in particular.
It's interesting, in my talk with medical doctors who have examined what we will call the gray specimens, quote unquote, in Brazil and other countries, they have found that there's a membrane over the mouth so they cannot speak or they cannot even sing music as we identified for. And this is a very important physiological, what I would say, limitation, that the
of some of these
true
other
brotherhoods can sing music and they can speak a language of light, a language of celebration. Do not have to violate our free will or do surreptitious things under the table. No, the work, what we must envision, has to be above board, has to be transparent, has to be in the light, and has to be available to all branches of the human race. There has to be authentic science and musicology that come together in the celebration of what we're going through in terms of the new quantum mind extension of life.
Do you have one of the things that we're experiencing here, which I think is just phenomenal, is these felines, and we actually got pictures of them. There's fifth and sixth dimensional felines coming in right now, and I know they used to call them Narsringa or the protectors in India, and Sekhmet and things of that nature.
Egypt used it a lot, the cat-faced
We've talked to people in southern Brazil who have claimed to see these feline forms. It's not surprising, of course, because Sekhmet and Bes and all of the notable statues in Egypt have the exquisite cat-like face. And we find this, of course, in China and the Far East, in Thailand and India, where you have the lions or the sacred cats there with the temples or guardians of the entrances. So by and large, these female or feline forms are seen as a positive branch that is a parallel branch of intelligence working within the human race.
Right. We think there's like 70 different extraterrestrial races, but the cat and even the cats, that energy might have actually come. We believe certain animals came from very positive civilizations to this planet, such as the horse and the cat, and of course the dog and some other ones as well. But that cat family is very, very important and has helped humanity as well on planet Earth.
Yeah, we say that on the basis of the archaeological work we've done in other countries. And so we are
and I don't want to throw out also the dolphins and the whales.
And connecting these energy points of contact with actual film studies under the oceans of China and Japan, or in the mountain regions of the Andes and in East Africa. So we're not just saying this to be nice on radio. We're saying to the radio audience worldwide that we are doing the archaeological work, the geological work, the linguistic work, to see whether or not there are other layers of early civilization that left behind, as it were, the symbolic language or the ideographic patterns that are connecting now on a very high level of new vibratory insight that we can use, adapt, and perhaps extend through certain forms of technology or certain forms of musicology into other areas where we build a contact environment to work with those positive forms of intelligence that are beginning to show themselves at the doorstep of Mother Earth.
There's somebody who was, talking to, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but Baruchi. He's one of the scientists that said there's over 100 billion galaxies, and he's talking about all the new calculations of the planets, as we were talking about before, that they've got now 500 million Earth-like planets that could sustain life out there with that new Kepler.
Well, the new Kepler system has identified one known as Kepler 11 that has a model of what we see in our solar system of a mother star with 6 planets around it called Kepler 11, and we're going to find more and more of these extrasolar.
Yeah, they're all over the place if they are similar to our sun system at all.
Life forms and habitats.
Yeah, we really got to stop the idea that we're unique. I mean, it's just so
well, they asked him that. That was a question they asked. He says, well, why haven't they visited us, And his answer was, I don't know, And my answer to that is they have. They've always been here, and they've been coming and going for millions of years, and they've been observing us, waiting for us to stop acting like primitives, warring on each other in the planet, and shooting at them. And as soon as we get our act together, I'm sure they'll come and hang out with us.
If you take time to visualize No, which is a name or title for an ancient area of Egypt, and look at the documents of Egypt and India, there is just a plethora of documents that speak of Star Wars in the heavens, the experiments of early civilization connected with the star people. I mean, one just has to be a student taking a little bit of anthropology and cultural history in depth to understand that it is only in recent times that people would be foolish enough to ignore the fact that our planet was, in the past tense, was very active with a more brilliant astronomy of starborn intelligence interacting, unfortunately, in many instances negatively, but still there on the scene of requiring a type of spiritual teaching and psychology that would be orientated to the positive upliftment of the human race. I mean, this is Schoolhouse Mother Earth waking up.
Right, but you go back, you mentioned that we have done a lot of translation of the Coptic text, and if you read them, they talk about light years, they talk about multi-dimensions, they talk about other eons that have myriads of intelligences in there, and they talk about really the threshold points from this reality to really more refined realities. So they were into parallel universes and, multi-universes, multiverses, way before, we got into it right now. So this is something that the ancients have always talked about and understood, and we're just getting back into it.
And even if you look at the book we call our Bible, in the book of Jeremiah the prophet, he speaks of Noph, N-O-P-H, as being a very important area. So I encourage the audience to look at Scripture, Jeremiah chapters 44 to 46, where he speaks of very interesting details connected with Egypt and sacred cities that would be areas of very important knowledge of the heavens and the divine plan, which we see coming now upon Mother Earth. We're being given a choice to go with violence and the downward spiral, or to realize that we are God-given creations, that we have a place as citizens of the universe to attend to the development of the gifts of co-citizenship, co-creation, a whole new type of psychology, a whole new type of medicine of light and healing, a whole new type of medicine and music, of putting them together and realizing the vibratory change within ourselves must occur first before we can have an understanding of these events surrounding us. Unless we have self-realization and know who we really are in the cosmic scheme of things, all of these are disconnected dots in the sky or geometries of light forms. It has absolutely no meaning to the singularities of certain specialists in science who are only trained to be astronomers, but do not have the cosmology or the sociology that is necessary. We need to have a generation of people who are generalists as well as specialists, who can connect the dots, who can see the total plan of a new blueprint of life.
But I think we really have to start with seeing that we did not evolve from planet Earth. And once we start changing that cosmology, we start understanding who we are. Yes, we've been quarantined for a while. This has been nice. We've been able to grow, develop, see how we can work amongst ourselves. Obviously done a very bad job of that. We haven't even been good caretakers of Mother Earth. So, I mean, why do they want us to come back? But, when the planet starts making changes and when there's a whole galactic house cleaning, because we don't think, this is interesting, James, we don't think it's just us that have been the real problem of everything. There's been local levels of intelligence that we've been tapping into in consciousness spheres that have also not been very helpful. So this is why there's a great galactic house cleaning coming upon.
I like that. I like that.
It goes right down to Egypt with the pyramids. Jeremiah 44, this is what Jeremiah speaks about in the land of Egypt, in the land of Migdol and Tophanes and Noph, N-O-P-H, and Pathros. These are areas of great archaeological significance. There are clues here thus to what I would call the cosmic exodus that just as the children of Israel were taken out of Egypt, according to the Keys of Enoch, humanity will be going into a cosmic exodus through the Red Sea, which is the solar spectrum, out of the Egypt of the earth. In other words, the traditional geometric forms of economic pyramid building, of economic servitude, into a higher land of creation, a higher creation of divine spirit. And this is a great thrill that we can all share in a whole new cosmic civics, a whole new astronomy and cosmology of life, a whole new theology that explains a loving divine experience of God redeeming his people through their awakening to the divine gifts. This is a blessed point and assurance that we share with all brothers and sisters.
I think we need to reevaluate, the word power, because people think that power is how much wealth you amass and how much power you have over others. But, love being the ultimate power and love serves is something that seems to be pressing hard on the earth right now and totally undoing this old egotistic separation program of what power really is.
Right. Even the economic challenges that people are facing in this country are making people work closer together. So it's in that sense, it's been a positive thing. And we do need to share more. And if you're going to be like the Brotherhoods and Sisters of Light, we have to be brotherhoods and sisters down here, and that's the first phase.
So we must teach people to share the car, because gas in the whole sustainable situation is going to slightly change. To share the food products, the commodities, to share the cultivation of the pasture lands and the environment, to share the responsibilities of working with each other's children. And this is really the shift that the fathers and the mothers of the historic cultures have shown us, where people have worked together as a team. That society has survived these great global changes. Hyper-individualism by and of itself is short-lived. It plays only to the benefit of the few, and tragically it will go the way of many of the situations where there is diminishing returns. We must teach, thus, responsibility on the highest of levels, heart-centered interactions in a new sociology, and positive thinking in terms of a new psychology of reaching out and working only with those forms of cosmic intelligence that respect our four freedoms, our precious charter of human rights and responsibilities, and even more important, our God-centered spark of life that we see in each individual who breathes upon Mother Earth.
Yeah,
thank you for reaching out to so many people throughout the world, and we wish you well as you continue this journey of putting the pieces together as we continue to travel through the world, working with scientists, investigators, sociologists, all who are involved in the quantum change that is coming.
I can't thank you enough, both you and Desiree, for your work and amassing all this incredible information. And I'm so fascinated by the new tones and even the language and everything else. I think once this comes out, it's going to be a real godsend and help us shift this.
We have a new edition of the Keys of Enoch with all the color plates. Again, for those who are interested, www.keysofenoch.org. For those who are interested, we also
have another website called healtheplanet.org, so if people want to send positive energies for loved ones or even for the planet, we ask people to put their comments out there so we can all, go there and put some positive energy. It's helped a lot of people throughout the world. And I'm glad you had your flute, because you're probably familiar with the Peruvian healing vessels as well. They're also sound vessels. They help to heal the body just by sound frequencies. So I think you're on the right track in terms of transformation.
So if we get brothers and sisters throughout the world, we can visualize them singing, dancing in the streets. We can visualize them holding the musical instruments up. We can visualize them beginning to use sacred expressions, sacred sounds of unity. If we can begin to visualize children encircling Mother Earth, holding hands in a dance and a chorus of celebration and what we will call the divine names of God, then we begin to understand the names of Metatron. Then we begin to understand the names of the principal angels and archangels who were the true master beings and teachers to the authentic, historic, and prophetic cultures of the past.
And why the angels always had certain types of musical instruments. I mean, that's not really musical instruments. It's sound vibration. It's like you said, the sounds that resonate around them is part of that whole...
Yeah, they're always singing.
But may this music inspire us. May it quicken us. May it bring us into the realization of world without end, universe without end, house of many mansions without end.
Great. Hey, well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I definitely need a 3-hour show, especially with people of your expertise. But we're out of time, unfortunately, so we've got to sign off. So basically, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. It's just been an awesome, enlightening experience, and we'll have to do it again real soon.
Keep up the great work at ECETI.
All right, you too.
Blessings.
All right, bye. Well, we're out of time. Another awesome interview with Hurtak. So stay tuned for more information coming out a little later on, and we're going to really get into these shifts and changes and all the science behind them in the days to come. So anyway, this is James Gillen with Contact Has Begun and World Puja signing off. Have a great day.